Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarai. Amen. Okay, good morning, Chavra. Good night of Shabbos. On however much or however little sleep we've had. We have to do our best, Bezos Hashem, to finish out an amazing week. Baruch Hashem, an amazing week full of learning together, growing together, exploring together. With today's shir, B'siyata D'Shmaya. Today's shir is sponsored by Baruch Berger as a zechus for Freda Gold Bas Devora and Eliyahu Bitzalel Bas Devora, that they should be happy and healthy and continue to bring nachas to their parents, and Deena and Abi Holchendler. Le'ilin nishmas Deena's fathers, Jerry Pasternak, Gedaliah, and Menachem Yehoshua. Also by Zev Klein, Le'ilin nishmas his parents, Revka Barinder Bas Simcha, and Ya'akov ben Yeshעיהו. Also dedicated as a zechus for refuah sheleimah for Chaim Yehoshua ben Chaya Miriam, who I mentioned last night as Baruch Hashem, I believe very strongly as a result of our learning getting better and better. Chazi Hashem. Also dedicated as a zechus for refuah sheleimah for Chaim Avrohom Ben Rochel, who needs major rachim shamayim, and our learning should be a zechus for all of the names mentioned, and nishmas for all of those who need an aliyas neshama, and a refuah sheleimah b'karev to all those who need healing. Just a technical announcement that's quite exciting. The way that it works in my life generally is that I don't really sort of plan projects. We were speaking when we got together to mark the anniversary of this year, that things just happen at the right moment. It was a strange thing. It was something Yehuda put on my table, or it ended up on my table by my seat. It was a transcript of one of the shirim of Rabbi Joey Rosenfeld, and it just occurred to me, it's time to start doing transcripts of the shirim. It just became very, very obvious and clear. Baruch Hashem, we have the technology that makes it not super, super easy, but much easier than it used to be. So at least it provides you with a transcript, but then it needs editing. But with Hashem's help, B'siyata D'Shmaya, we are going to begin releasing transcripts all the way back from the beginning, which enables people to print them out and have them on Shabbos for reading. And also, we're going to be distributing Be'ezus Hashem to the local shuls. And even though it's a daily shir, and this will only be one a week, but at the very least, it'll hopefully pique people's interest and sort of put it in front of them in a new form, and maybe catch their attention and bring people, to the actual shirim if they want more frequently. And on social media, on WhatsApp, we are going to be releasing as many as possible, sort of as they come out, long before the printing of them in the shul. So, Be'ezus Hashem, stay tuned. We're going to be opening a new WhatsApp group for this, or it's just admin only, just to receive these transcripts when they come out. You're free to print them, you're free to keep them, save them. There'll be a book one day, they'll be contrasim. When we get to the end of Torahs, we'll be releasing them like that, and then hopefully a very large, multi-volume, gigantic work with thousands and thousands of pages over the course of all the shirim. It's already over 1,000 pages. I did the calculation up until Amud Vav, and there are 411 lessons. So, it's going to be a very, very large work, Be'ezus Hashem. But just having beta tested the first, the transcript of the first year has gotten tremendous feedback. B'siyata D'Shmaya. So if the Chaver can help me out with a name for the Pirish, I wrote Leiv Basar, but it was just a placeholder. I'm sort of thinking that through. Please do share your ideas and recommendations with me. And it's an exciting thing. It's a hugely exciting thing, because it takes all of the insight that we've been sharing and it puts it into a new form. It's a new gilui, into a new realm of reality that will hopefully be able to reach more people, or the same people in a slightly different way, because you can reference it, you can go back, you can highlight, you can underline, you can keep track much more visually of what it is that we've been learning together. So, Ashreinu. It's a very, very special thing, and looking forward to that. Okay, let's jump in. B'siyata D'Shmaya. We are holding in Torah Lamed Zayin, and we've been speaking about the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating the world catalyzed by the concept of Bina Bria, the desire to become known, the desire to become revealed, that there should be the known, the one who's being known, and the knower, which is splitting into bays, right? The bays of Bina, Bria, from Aleph, from Atzilos, that ultimately manifests in our lives in the way of either being able to do the knowing, which is the 7 lower aspects of Adam, Tzura, Chachma, Ar, Chaim, Zikaron, and Nefesh, or like Chava created off of Adam, because of our self-identification, because of our experience of self, we can just keep our back, right, so to speak, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and walk in the direction of Behema, Chaymer, Sichlus, Choshechma, Shikha, and Guf. And we said that one of the primary ways to enable a person to rise out of those latter aspects of 7 in those pairs and rise into the former is the Bechina of Tainus, which we spoke about, is the aspect of Tzedakah, which we spoke about, is the aspect of Hispodidus, is the aspect of assuming a childlike posture. Hevel Peh She'ein B'Chet. It's an aspect of the Avira, the Eretz Yisrael. That's what we spoke about yesterday. And I just want to return there for a moment. We spoke about the Zohar HaKadosh that said, Hanitzanim niru va'aretz, Eis HaZamar higia v'kol haTorah nishma ba'artzenu. And said the Zohar HaKadosh, what's the reference that's being employed to speak about tikkun? We highlighted this, that the Zohar said, and that Rabbi Menachem said, Ki ein hadim nimtak. The din is only sweetened as a result of the Tanakh Shal Beis Rabba and Hevel PM, which is the Bechina of Avir Eretz Yisrael, which is accomplished through tzedakah that a person sends to Eretz Yisrael. We spoke about all this yesterday. But that lashon of ein hadim nimtak, I pointed out, really correlates to the very classical understanding in the context of which that phrase is employed, which is ein hadin nimtak or ein hadinim nimtakim ella b'shayrasha. It always makes reference right after those words to the shayrish, which is bina, like we explained, because bina is where fragmentation happens. At that point, it's not din; it's very holy and sweet and beautiful. Right, because in the frame, literally, right, well, using a metaphor, I guess not literally, but literally, figuratively, right, in the metaphor of Bina, of the window in the frame, in that frame, the separateness is the most gorgeous thing in the world. It separates so that the unity could be even deeper, right, and that's the separation of Adam and Chava, so that Adam and Chava can be unified in an even deeper way. That's the shirish of din, meaning that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu splintered reality into the known, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be known, and the knower. But then, because that ultimate fracture occurs in Bina, that ultimately opens the door for an experience of self which can lead a person down and away. And that's why all the din that actually becomes din, which is fragmentation, separation, and so on and so forth, separateness from the one, needs to be sweetened. How do you sweeten that aspect of a lower sense of self? You bring it into the higher sense of self. That's what it means. Ein hadinim nimtakim ela b'sharashim. You bring everything back to Bina. So we're not trying to do away with ourself. That's why Yiddishkeit is very different from the Eastern religions, right? We're not trying to nullify ourselves, ego dissolution. We're not trying to do that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has malachim who are in a constant state of ego dissolution. I don't know if they experience themselves as having a self. It's an interesting thing to think about. Right? Does the Malach Gavriel experience the Malach Gavriel? Because the only thing of the Malach Gavriel is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, kishmi b'kirbai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Malach Gavriel only exists because Hashem is giving the Malach, missions, and he just has to do the missions. Like, that's an interesting thing. I don't know. Like, what's the self-consciousness of Malach Gavriel?
Do we have instances where the Malachim get angry? Because that suggests they may have.
I guess. I mean, that itself is a very complicated sugya. We're going to learn in Likutei Torah Aleph and Tinyana in a very, very long time. As Rosh Hashanah, we'll get there together. Where the Rebbe speaks about the Gemara that speaks about how the Malachim can get jealous, right? It could be mekana. But you have to know what that means. Could be that's also part of the programming. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about. I don't know. But our sense of self is not meant to be done away with. Hashem wants human beings to have a sense of self. He just wants us to bring the fullness of that sense of self into a panim b'panim direct, intimate relationship with our source. That's Bina. Bina doesn't mean that we stop existing. The fetus growing in the mother's womb, to be unified with the mother and to be totally conscious of the fact that it's literally being sustained straight through the umbilical cord by the mother, doesn't stop existing. It exists. It exists within the womb. That's Bina. Understand? Bina is the womb. If it's the ocean, It's the drops within the ocean. They're within the ocean, but they each have this self-consciousness of being singular drops, right? That's the shirish, where we're trying to rectify all of the other din that evolves, or I should say devolves, or degenerates down in the lower spheres to bring it up back to the shirish. So that's maybe a tacit, like I said yesterday, a tacit reference that Rabbi Nachman is making over here when he uses the terminology ein hadin nimtak ve'ein ha'olam miskayim, and then he says ela yidei hevel peshel tinakis, meaning what's going to bring us back to that world of bria. Hevel peshel tinakis, that's an aspect of Eretz Yisrael. Tzedakah is an aspect of tainus, is an aspect of giving tzedakah to Eretz Yisrael. We become nichlal in avir de Eretz Yisrael, and in that way we're able to be nimtak, we're able to be mamtik, the lower seven, and we're able to return back to our shirish. But a point that I think we glossed over yesterday is going to be important to focus on as we move forward is Ilain Avos Olam. Rabbi Nachman makes reference to the Avos, the Avos HaKdoshim. That's what's protecting the Oretz, which is the Bechina of Eretz Yisrael, Kad Asa Idan Lekatzat Tzaya, Lekatzat Chayavaya. When Eis HaZamir Higia, when, like we said, there's a Midas Hadin in the world, what's going to protect? Kol Atar Nishma Ba'artzenu. Okay, on account of what? What is the Kol Hatar, which is the sound of the Torah study of the youth, of the Tinoka Shabes Rabban? What does that activate in order for there to be a protective energy on the earth? And the answer is, go back to the beginning of the pasuk, Hanit Sanim Niru Va'aretz. It's the Avos. The Avos are activated. That's Hanitzanim Nir Ba'aretz, because Eis HaZamar gave a Kalatar Nishma Ba'artzenu that awoke, or awakened, the Avos HaKdosh. And the Rebbe says that explicitly, Ayidei Kala Dianuka Deravia Nizgalu HaAvos Ba'olam Lahage. All of a sudden there's an Indian of the Avos. And then he says that again, later on, V'zapirish, V'zacharti es Brisi Ya'akov, es Brisi Avram, the Esbrisi Yitzchak, and then it says V'ha'aretz Eskar. The Avos. So I want to speak about the Avos for a minute. Why is that the Haganah? Like, why is that the protection? Okay, listen to this carefully. This is a really important point. And we're going to get into this also later on in the Torah, probably next week. And the way that we presented it is that you're speaking about the womb of reality, that's the Indian of Bina Bria, where everything, the window shatters, it's held in the frame, using that metaphor again. We just give another metaphor, the child that has a sense of self, a fetus, especially in the later months, but it's within the mother, it's within the womb. And then we have the 7 lower midas. Now the 7 lower midas, and as much as a person's stuck in them outside of the context of a connection with realizing that there's a shirish, right? There's a reason that I have all these emotions. There's a reason that I have all these limbs and all the different aspects of my own personality, which are in the lower realms of my experience. It's supposed to go back to Bina Bria, right? It's supposed to help me come, like we said, panim bepanim to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Adam and Chava. But in as much as there's a fragmentation down in the lower realms, so then the danger is chaos. And the danger is, going back to Shviras HaKelim that we spoke about two Torahs ago, the concept of a shattering of ana emleich, right? Because we go into self, and so all of a sudden, we're not in integration. Every part of us wants to be because in as much as we have a sense of self, so then it's not like the whole sense of self is unified. We're in an energy of fragmentation. We live out of a regulated state of either homogeneity or inner peace. In any kind of identifiable structure, we spoke about hefkerus, right, in the last Torah. All these things, behema, chomer, zechus, choshech, maves, shikha, guf, it's not an energy of integration, right? It's not an energy of a structure that is ordered. It's not an orderly structure. All these things are chaotic. A behema, it's a behema. It's not with say, it's bahamias. right? Chaimer, just coarse physicality. Sichlus, folly, choshech, darkness, maves, death. All these things are radically out of control. They're radically, there's no glow of structure, right? Says the Rebbe, when there's din in the world, and we want an energy that's going to maintain the layers of din, in other words, because again, we don't want to nullify the self, we want to maintain the self. All we want to do is to take all of these various strings that are hanging down in all chaotic ways, straighten them out, and just can reconnect them, plug them back in, so to speak, to the world of Bina Bria. So the energy that's going to be protective is called the Avos. Now the Avos is Avram, Yitzchak, Ya'akov, is Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes. In the Olam HaTikun, they're arranged in a very precise way. They, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, are the heart of the whole system, because really the whole system is just 3 sets of triads. You have Chachma, Bina, Das, let's say for now. You have Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Then you have Netzach, Yisod, and Netzach, Hod, and Malchus. No, I'm sorry. Then you have Netzach, Hod, Yisod, right? And then Malchus becomes the Kli for everything. But essentially, it's really just 3. It's 3, it's tripled over. But really, the core of the system is 3. That's the core of the system. Yud, Hey, Vav, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and then Hey, Malchus, David. The Daled Raglim Merkaba. That's all there is. It's really, really 3. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. So the Rebbe over here is speaking about the energy of integration. What is going to tame the chaotic Bahamias, Sichlus, Mavesh, Choshech, Shikha, what's going to tame it? What is going to put an imprint of order onto the chaos? Says the Rebbe, it's going to be the integrated energy of the Avos, of this fundamental template for structure, order, balance amid imbalance. That's the incredible part. So remember, we were speaking about midos tovos, midos rais, right? Balanced midos, imbalanced midos. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov maintain as a triadic structure tremendous imbalance. There's 2/3 more imbalance in that triadic structure than there is balance, because Avram and Yitzchak represent, spiritually speaking, completely imbalanced energies. Avram is imbalanced to the side of Chesed. Again, he's an unbelievable tzaddik, but what he represents, Yitzchak represents an imbalance to the side of Gvura, which of course is why they both have psilas, right, in their progeny. Right, the Torah is communicating to us that imbalance is going to end up producing a kilkel, Yishmael from the side of Avram and Esav from the side of Yitzchak. But then they maintain as a template the way in which imbalance and an experience of a dialectic swinging, right, from one imbalance to another imbalance, can actually, in the end, give us enough data so that we're able to make a calculated cheshbon. It must be that I have to come back to 1. What's that 1 that we come back? What is that? Amud de Emsiisa. So it says in the Zohar Kodesh, it's that 1 is really 1 all the way down. It's the same energy of Keser. It's all 1 line. The MS, all of the Kavim are all 1, and it's just 1 energy that gets further developed and explicated. But really, if you want to know sort of where everything starts, it's really all in Keser. That's really, because that's that original energy that maintains all different concepts, splinters into Chachma Bina, comes back in Das. Splinters into Chesed and Gvura, comes back in Tifer. Splinters into Netzach and Hod, comes back in Yisod. And we spoke about the necessity to take this process, because that's how Kadosh Baruch Hu unfolded the world in this process. Imbalance, imbalance, balance. Further imbalance, balance. Right? That is the system. And so speaking about the chaotic energy of din, of self-fragmentation, of Bahamias, animalistic tendencies of Chaimer, Sichus, Cheshach, Mava, Shikha, Guf, and we want to have a protective energy that's going to be mamtik the din and bring the din back to their shirish, we need an energy of integration. We need an energy of the Avos Olam. that is activated in the world on account of the Tinoika Shel Beis Rabban and their Hevel Peh She'ein Bachet, which is connected to Avir the Eretz Yisrael Machkim. How do we activate that in our lives? Giving tzedakah to support Eretz Yisrael. Okay? It's going to be very important as we carry on. So let's turn over the page and we begin with Ice Hey. Says the Heilige Rebbe Zechus Yaganolenu V'zeh Pirish. And with this we can understand, and this is going to take us all the way to Ice, well, all the way to the end really, of this particular lesson. With this we can understand the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Whether it's a tzaddik, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira gave 3 warnings. Shloisha azharais, or hazharais, she's here Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira min Netzivim. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira from the city of Netzivim gave 3 warnings. Number 1, Hizaru bezakin sheshakach talmudai machmas ansai. A person has to be careful to respect a Talmud Chacham that on account of old age forgot his learning. We should maintain our kavod for such a person because he had an oinus, right? And that's Menachem. It's not like, again, he didn't try to forget his learning. Nebuch, right? Old age, dementia, delusion. You have to be careful to honor that zaken. And then number 2, V'yizaru b'ravidin keRebbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that we have to hold like the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to shechting birds, as we're going to see. You have to shecht all the way through until you get through the jugular vein and make sure that all the blood gets emptied out. Do a proper job of shechita with the birds. V'izharu b'vnei amei haaretz, and to also be careful about honoring and about not denigrating the children of Amei Aretz, of the simple folk, of the unlettered, of the unlearned, because Shemehem Teitzei Torah, we've seen so many times that although the parents might not be Talmidei Chachamim, but the children can be. Okay, these 3 things. So this is what it means al pi pshat, and these are very important things al pi pshat. Says the Rebbe, what does it mean al pi soid razin de razin, the side of side? Says the Heilige Tzaddik, these 3 bechinais, hem kulam raimzim lehisalas hanefesh v'aseichel v'atar v'azikarin. They are all giving us different aspects or facets of the necessity to rise out of the lower aspects of the 7 pairs and into the higher aspects of those 7 pairs. So let's start from the beginning. We're going to focus most on the second one, but let's start from the beginning. Zaken zeh sheshachach talmudei machmas einsai. This Zaken who forgot his learning on account of his old age and maybe illness or just old age. Hu bechinas misa. That's the aspect of the energy of death. V'sichlus and fali machmas shikha. Right? So you have most of the lower 7, or at least almost half of the lower 7, you have right here in this person. He's the embodiment of all of it because he's zaken, he's getting close to misa, and he's in shikha, and that is called sichlus, right? So that's the energy of those aspects. But the reason the Gemara, the reason Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira is telling us, right, his Rabbi Yehuda l'chabdai is warning us to still honor this person, is because of al-einis rachmana poitrei. It's because the Torah patters him, realizes Nebuch, it's not his fault. His Rabbi Yehuda l'chabdai, and Rabbi Yehuda warns us, encourages us to honor him. Why? Because says Rabbi Yehuda, shal yedei kavod. Says Rabbi Nachman, shal yedei kavod yizbatel mimenu hashikha. Actually, our honoring him, our continuing to treat him the way that he is used to being treated, can actually help for the shikha to be removed, the izgala hanefesh. I can actually allow for his own nefesh to be brought back. It's a very deep principle. Hainu zichron Torah, and can help him to remember his Torah. Why? And then I'll explain outside a little bit. Kisharish, says the Rebbe, Kisharish Torah, he kved Hashem Yisbarach. Because the shirish of Torah is the kavod of Hashem, kamashikasav, like we said in the beginning, l'chvaydi b'rasav itzar devav hasisiv. HaKadosh Baruch Hu stirred to create the whole world on account of his kavod l'chvay dibur hasiv yitzhar tavav asisiv, and all of reality, all of creation is the Torah. Stakaba raiso bar alma, everything is Torah. Kamay shama chachamim is chad bracha, as the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, ein kavod ela Torah. And so by being mechabe, this person who forgot his learning, kavod is associated with Torah. That itself can actually bring back the person's nefesh. And this is sounding very, very similar to the story of the Turkey prince, which we just learned together the other night. All the while that we confirm a person's forgetfulness and start to relate to them on the level of their new assumed identity, whether consciously or subconsciously, that's just going to fortify where they are. But if we're able to look at the prince that thinks he's a turkey and still see a prince, doesn't matter how, like that's not, we're not mityaches to what's going on. I'm looking at the true reality of what I know was, what I know will ultimately be, and therefore what still is in the moment. That itself can change the whole matziv. That itself can help the person out of shikha and wake them up, because look, you're still being mityaches to them as a holy soul, right? It's not this exact mashal, but it's something similar, right? You're still interacting with that individual in a way that you would have if he was the best boy in yeshiva, in the way that you, right? Like nothing, like there's no different. You're not mityaches to the way that he's showing up. And now, hair and tattoos, and all these different things, that's not what you see. I'm not going to acknowledge that or even like interact with that person on that level. I'll look into the eyes and see I'm still going to see that point of Kedusha, which is the essence of that person. And sometimes just by relating to the person in that way, all of a sudden, the shikha is able to be wiped away. You can bring the person back. This is also something very similar to Reish Peves, right? The famous teaching of Azamra, where Menachem tells us that simply by finding the Nekuda Tova, simply by finding a good point in somebody, you can bring them back to tshuva. This itself is connected to what we already learned in Lamed Gimel, which, if you remember, I said was pop the hood onto Reish Peves, and you see Lamed Gimel, that's the engine underneath, where we spoke about that tzaddik who, because he's so pure, he's purified his own midas. Mamela, everywhere he looks, he's able to activate the letters of the Aleph Beis and everything, right? And then the garments are able to fall away, and Zachin Lemishma Kalam Le'ela, and all of a sudden massive doses of shefa are able to come down to that point in reality. Incredible thing. All from the sentence from Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, who says, "Izar b'zachin sheshach al Talmud machmas oinsai." Have to keep honoring him. And the very important line, you can gloss over this easily. Shal yedei hakavod hisbatal mimenu hashikha. So here he's speaking about a zaken who forgot his learning it. But this is a true model that applies much more broadly. It's a very important line. If you have a highlighter, maybe a highlighter, underline it. When we still honor the person, even though on some level it's reasonable to stop giving that person kavod, because they forgot themselves and they fell to lower levels, that itself that itself can cause a person to remember who they are, because you're relating to that part of them that they've forgotten. Okay, a very, very beautiful thing. That's point number one. Now let's move to the bulk of this Torah, which is all about shechita, and that's point number 2, which is Eisvav. Okay, this is just mind-blowing. This is irregular, even for Likutei. Okay? So bear with this. And don't ask me too many questions, because I don't know anything. We're just learning it together. V'zeu says the Rebbe's Chus Yagen Aleinu, Hizaru v'ridin Rabbi Yehuda. This is the second thing Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira said. We have to be sure as shochtim that if a shochet is going ahead and shechting a bird, needs to be very careful, because there was another opinion that said it's not so important. Very careful to cut all the way through all of the veins that hold the blood in the neck. Hizar b'ravidin, and that was the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Rebbe, Ki hadam hu nefesh. The pasuk says that we don't eat dam, huge isser, diaraisa, right? Which just goes to show the amaratzos of the Christians, of blood libels. I mean, they never read the Bible in the first place, right? Literally, it's an isser d'oraisa to eat dam. There's no asterisk and says except Christian children. It's an isser d'oraisa. You cannot eat blood. This world is a crazy world. Why? Says the pasuk, Ya dam wa nefesh. The dam is the nefesh. Now, ostensibly, al pi pshat, whose nefesh? The animal's nefesh, right? So you don't eat blood because it's, says the Rebbe, no. Ki adam wa nefesh haba b'gilgal. There's a human in there. There's a human in there. This animal, right, speaking about animal blood, right, certainly human blood. Animal blood, there's a nefesh haba b'gilgal. There's or at least could be, potentially, a human soul in there. And therefore, when the Shochet is shechting this animal, he needs to be mechaven lahalois hanefesh shebadam. There's a tikkun for the nefesh that came in Gilgal in this cow, or in this sheep, or in this goat, or in this deer, v'chulei, to be mala the nefesh that's in the dam, and that's the job of the Shochet. The Shochet, it's a crazy thing. The Shochet is the gatekeeper between this world and the next. The Shochet is the Malach HaMavas Klape, the Behemoth. Right? He's the Shochet. Based on his intention, as we're going to learn, or lack thereof, the nefesh that came into Gilgal in this animal is either getting its tikkun or it's going into the netherworld. It's going into further chaos. Again, I said, don't ask me questions. I don't know how these things work at all. I don't know if anybody does. I certainly don't. Just reading to you what the Rebbe says. The Shochet is the gatekeeper. All of a sudden, it's not so simple. Yeah, Shochet, you learn the Shochet. Whoa. You have to be a major mekubal to be a Shochet. Because the nefashos that are Baba Gilgal in these animals are tali on you. And the Rebbe's going to use wildly evocative language in a minute. Okay, it's just opening the sugya here. Gam ikar chesvena parnasa shenismad b'daras halalu, and says the Rebbe, because the reason why people struggle with parnasa, it used to be much more. Now we live in a time of a little bit more abundance, at least to some. But back then, parnasa was extremely difficult. Says the Rebbe, ein zeh ella. The reason for this is because the sheichtim are not doing their job properly. They think that they're supposed to be shechting animals just so people should fress, at meat boards and things like this. It's a job, especially today. It's just a production. It's sheichatim. Sheichatim she'ena mehuganim is causing terrible destruction of the world. That's why it says in the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, ein Torah, ein kemach. If there's no Torah, there's not going to be any sustenance. Says the Rebbe, what's Torah? Torah b'chinas nefesh kanal. We already said Torah is the b'china of meshivas nefesh. Torah is Hashem temima, meshivas nefesh. We said on the top of the page. Torah is nefesh. So if there's ein Torah, if there's no tikkun for the nefesh in the dam of the behema, al yedei ze ein kemach, ha-parnasa nisma'it. Parnasa is lessened. And it's for this reason that hachalif, the knife of the Shochet, nikra ma'acheles, is called a ma'acheles. Like it says, Avram Avinu v'yikach es ma'acheles l'shchotes b'noi. Ma'acheles is this knife. It's called a chalif. It's all called a ma'acheles. Why? Because there are sheichatim agunim, there are proper sheichtim who have the proper kavanah when they make the bracha of al hashchita, and they have in mind in that moment, as we're going to learn, to be mal the nefesh that's in the dam, and to help to mediate between this world and the next for the nefesh that came in Gilgal in this particular cow. Yesh sheichet hagun ma'achil u'mefarnes Yisrael. There's a sheichet hagun that sustains Klal Yisrael. And that's ma'acheles. Because on account of his doing his job properly, he's ma'achil. That causes parnasa. Yesh Torah, yesh kemach. Because the job of the Shochet, when he makes the bracha, is to elevate the nefesh that came in Gilgal on the level of behema, on the level of bahamias, as a result of living life in the second half of the lower 7 pairs, which is wrapped up into bahamias and sichlias and choshech and shikha and mabes uchule. And now he's in an actual behema on account of having lived that way. And the job of the Shochet is by making the bracha with kavana, which is the bechina of Chaim Medaber, is the bechina of Adam, Nefesh, right? The higher level, is to elevate the dam, which contains the Nefesh that was Baba Gilgal, and to elevate it into the bechina of Medaber. When he makes that bracha of Asher Kedishon, it says, Al Hashchita. When he says those 2 words, he has to be mechaven. He's elevating the nefesh into his words and sending it up to Shemayim. Ki ha-shoichet hagun, the proper shoichet, who malbish es ha-nefesh, shebechai, he clothes the nefesh that is currently embodied in an Indian of chai, in an animal, b'medaber. Hainu b'dibur, ha-bracha, shu mavarich, when he makes the bracha. The dibur is connected to the shechina, malchus peh. We know that malchus is the shechina and it's associated with dibur, right? And then when he makes the bracha, that's the bechina of shechina, he sends that up to Shemayim, containing now the nefesh of the behema that he just released. At the end of days, the sword of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is moladam, is full of blood. Says the Rebbe ki Ashchina Nikreis Cherev LaHashem. The Zohar says that Cherev LaHashem is a reference to the Shechina Kedosha v'hi b'chinas dibur, and that itself is an aspect of dibur, of speech, she'b'chinas Cherev Pifios biyadam, right? Which is an aspect of Cherev Pifios that associates Cherev with peh, with speech, which is dibur, which is Shechina Lashon peh. K'may shekasav roimam es kal b'groinam v'cherev Pifios biyadam. When the nefesh is rising into the aspect of cherev l'Hashem, which is the aspect of the chalif, of the knife, of a shoichet hagun, which is the bechina of macheles. So the nefesh rises up into the shechina, which is both the cherev l'Hashem, the shoichet's knife, as well as the words of the bracha that he's making with the proper kavana. It rises up into the speech. It becomes part of what's called the feminine waters, which we learn about in the context of zivug, that on all layers of reality, in order for the masculine and the feminine aspect to be mezavig, first and foremost, in order to awaken and in order to activate the male for zivug, there needs to be energy that's coming off of the feminine, right? And that's what is going to awaken the masculine counterpart. That's always called Mayin Nukvin, and more standard terminology, this is called the Serusa de Lisata, right? There's an awakening from below, and that's going to activate all of the spiritual energies above to desire yichud, and then shefa pours forth. And generally speaking, Nukvin is Shechina, right? The Shechina is the Nukva, is the feminine. It means the Shechina is always sending up Mayin Nukvin. Right, we're sending up. It's called nachas ruach. Right, that's what we're producing. It's chavdal kishutakala. Right, we are being mekashit ourselves with Torah and mitzvahs, so that Hashem should pour shefa down, and there should be a yichud between us by us showing that we want. Right, just like a wife, right, is trying to get her husband's attention. Right, dressing nicely and right, and that's the aspect of Mayin Nukvin. That's called feminine waters. And then there's Mayin Dechurin, right? Then there's male waters. That's the shefa that comes down on account of yichud. So when the shochet makes the bracha of ala shchita with this knife, he's supposed to be sending up Mayin Nukvin through his dibor, the bechina of shechina. And you know what's supposed to be a part of his dibor is the nefesh of this behema. It's supposed to be part and parcel of that. He's supposed to be having it in mind. Mamish, these things matter. Kavana is just as real as a maisa. It's a thing that happens in this world. It just doesn't happen tangibly, but it's extremely real, and it's poyel ois mamish or not. So when the shochet has this kavana, his shechina Mayin Nukvin carries up the nefesh of this behema. Then the Shechina is able to come into a state of zivug with the higher realms on account of the Mayan Nukvin that it carried. Like the Zohar Kadosh describes the Shechina going up to Kudsha Baruch Hu, which is the male counterpart, and saying, look what I've brought with me, look. The Shechina rises up Mayan Nukvin with our Torah and mitzvahs, with our own nefashas, carries it up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, look what I'm offering you. Let's be together. Look what I've carried. Look at your children that I've carried with you. So cherev laHashem, and as much as the Zohar Kadosh told us cherev laHashem is a reference to the Shechina, maladam, it carries up all the dam. What's the dam? Nefesh. What's the nefesh? The nefesh of human beings that came into Gilgul and animals. And the Shechina, which is the Shochet's bracha of ala Shchita, is supposed to carry up all of these nefashos. Nefashos ha'oilim baba b'chinas mayin nukvin. It raises all of the nefashos through the aspect of the feminine waters. Val yedei hazivug he mekabelas parnasa liyisrael. And then what happens? There's mayin nukvin. That causes yichud. What happens then? Mayin dechurin. Then the male waters pour forth, just like a husband and wife, right? This first is the aspect of the feminine. And then there's shefa that pours forth from the male. That's just the way it is begashmius, because that's the way it is beruchnius on all the levels. V'zeh listen to how painful this is. It's shocking. It's shocking. This is just shocking. V'zeh perish, says the pasuk in Eicha b'nafsheinu navilachmeinu mipnei cherev hamidbar. Because of the sword that came from the desert, now b'nafsheinu navilachmeinu. We can only make parnasa, says Yirmiyahu Hanavi in Eicha, b'nafsheinu, like with Mesiras Nefesh. It's very, very hard to make parnasa. Says the Rebbe, what's the remez? Hanu kisha shochet eino hagun. When the shochet is not the way that it's supposed to be, ve'eina malas hanefesh bebechinas mayin nukvin, and he makes the bracha without any kavana, or he doesn't make a bracha at all, or he just does it flippantly without understanding the gravity of what role he plays as a gatekeeper between this world and the next, as the malach hamaves, right, of the behemoths, that never occurs to him, and he learns the halachas and he does everything by halacha, but he's not in the avoida of what he needs to be, a roif in nefashis for these nefashis of Habab Gilgul. When he stands up with his knife, to take away the life of this animal, who oimid keretzeach nefashis. Says Rabbi Nachman, he's a murderer. He's a murderer. It's not a shochet. In that moment, he's a murderer. Because klape, the soul of the human that's here, this is not what that soul came down into this world for, to be taken away like this. Oimid keretzeach nefashos, v'hachalev shaloi, and his knife is called cherev hamidbar. It's a sword that comes from the desert. It's the warrior sword of the chaotic, barbaric forces of the desert of Bavel. Ve'ein cherev laHashem. It is not that cherev laHashem, shu cherev hamidaber, not cherev hamidbar. Cherev hamidaber, because cherev Hashem is the Shechina, right? It's supposed to be cherev hamidaber. It's supposed to elevate the nefesh. Now this is cherev hamidbar, v'yesh tsar laha nefesh hachai, and this causes excruciating pain to the nefesh of the chai. It's so funny because all the animal rights organizations are always speaking about shechita, and like they're right in a certain way, but not because of the guf, because of the nefesh. They should open up a new thing of PETA, right? That's what it's called, right? To train shoichtim to be mekubalim. It's animal welfare, right? Because v'yesh tsar la nefesh hachai should say ekes. Listen to this. Listen to the compassion that Rabbi Nachman had on Brias. He hears the nefashos of the animals screaming out. Should say ekes b'kol mar. You know what it screams out? It screams out psukim and shir hashirim. Nafshi yatsa, my soul is leaving me. Kishi yatsaz bishvil, and you know why? My soul only wanted to leave my body. Bishvil lahachnis bidabroi. Nafshi yatsa bidabroi. My soul wanted to leave through the dibur. Shala bracha of a bracha bekavana bebechinas my nukvin, to rise up through the aspect of the Shechina and the feminine waters, and to bring about a yichud, and that my soul should be mitukan. And all of a sudden I was killed and my soul left me, and bikashti v'lo mitzaseh. I didn't know where I couldn't find. I missed my train. I'm stranded in the air. My flight was canceled. I don't know where I am. My pilot was in a coma, was sleeping. And he had in his mind, well, pigel actually means, from the standpoint of karbanas, right, having in mind to eat it outside of the appropriate time and place. He doesn't mean actual pigel here, right? He's not speaking about kachim, right? But because in his mind, he was thinking about something else. This is not regular. Listen to this remez. Nafshi yotza b'dabroi b'kashta v'loy mitzasiv karasiv v'loy anani. Person's trying to get away from a war-torn land, smuggle across the border. You show up at the right time. You're there with all your bags. You're ready to go, and the guy never shows up. He just karasiv v'loy anani. And then I was left there stranded, and then, you know what happened? The guards at the gate found me. Hikuni pitsauni. They beat me up. Nasu esrididi me'alai. And they tore off the mantle, they tore off my special garment, and they tore it away from me. This aspect that at least the nefesh was in Gilgal and Chai, this itself was taken away. Now it needs to be mekugal in a lower form of reality. This itself they took away from me. I don't know where to go. Says Rabbi Nachman, woe is to this shochet. If you have any shochet friends, you should have sent them this year. No, I mean it. I really mean it, because this is like another thing. Who's Likutei for? Oh, it's for Breslovers. Like, not kasher. This is required reading, I think, for every single shochet or would-be shochet. Oy loy la shochet hazeh, oy la nefesh, shaharagas ha-nefesh. Woe is to this person who's murdering a nefesh, masar isa b'kafay veha, giving it over into the hand of the evil forces. Ve'ein la shchina mai nukvin, lahamshich teref lebesa. Now the shchina goes up and it's lacking a soul. Hamamela. And as a result of this nefesh that wasn't elevated, now im Torah ein kemach. So remember what I said in the beginning. We don't know when this Torah was said, but we do know that it was said on account of somebody coming to Rabbi Nachman and saying, I would like to be a shochet. Rabbi Nachman didn't answer him. A few days later, he taught this. And from this, the person understood, probably not a great idea to be a shochet. And the Rebbe then said explicitly, it's brought in Siach Sarfa Kodesh, I don't want any of my people to be a shochet, but if anybody's going to be a shochet, best that they should be a Breslover. He said, I don't want my chassidim to be shochetim, but we need shochetim, and they have to know what they're doing. So best that they should be sensitive in this way, leiv basar, plugged into this consciousness. Just one more anecdote and then we'll finish. Rabbi Nachman Kiadua was very, very, very against doctors. In his time, medicine was not well developed. People are mamish, like it wasn't clear that going to a doctor is going to help you any more than sitting at home. And Rabbi Nachman has a very, very sharp expression that shows up in Sefer Sichos Haran, where the Rebbe says that the Malach HaMaves can't be in millions of places at once killing all the people he needs to kill. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed the Malach HaMaves to put doctors in every place, and they're doing the job of the Malach. That was like his thing, right? And he just wanted people to rely on Emunah. Yes, he himself used doctors. You have to know, right, what kind and at what point and at what stage. But he wanted people, mamish, to really believe in tefillah and Emunah and so on and so forth. But again, in responsible parameters. Listen to, if you would like, to my shir that I gave on that in Zechus, and we go through that sugya at length. Okay. So somebody came to Rabbi Nachman and said, Rebbe, I'm thinking of becoming a shochet. So Rabbi Nachman said, better you should become a doctor. So he said, Rebbe, you want me to be a murderer? Right, because he was referencing what Rabbi Nachman had said about doctors. And then the Rebbe looked up and he said, is there a difference between murdering a human when he's in a human body and murdering a human when he's in an animal body? The same Indian. I've never seen anything like this in other Sfarim. It's absolutely new. It's a new perspective on animals. And here I am to tell you, and with this will mamish finish, that you and I are also b'china sheichtim. Anytime you pick a flower, if you pick a flower, anytime you eat some food that's in front of you, drink a drink, there aren't nefashis in there? There are nefashis in there. Whether it's nefashis mamish, whether it's nitzitzis to kedusha, which is also bechina, and they all want to be elevated through our dibur. And this whole process of the crying out of nafshi yatsa and bedabrai, bikash v'lei mitzasiv, kras v'lei anonim, mitzuni hashayim v'sayim v'ir, hikuni mitzuni. We have to realize that that's the nitzitzis that are crying out from all the food that we eat, from all the water and everything else that we drink, from everything that we interact with in the physical world. We're supposed to be elevators. We're supposed to mediate between this world and the next. We're supposed to lift everything up. And so really we have to be conscious, not to be chayshim machshavas pigel, right? Which adjusted just means we're already thinking about some other place, some other time. We're not present. Hashem should help us to be present, to take ourselves seriously, to take our brachas seriously. And in so doing, bar nefashis, right? In so doing, we should be able to elevate everything in Mayin Nukvin, and that should trigger mega doses of shefa, parnasa, refuah, bracha of every kind, down to Achenu B'nai Yisrael and to all of humanity. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Thank you for another
מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני